So we had 17 families who helped found City Neighbors together. There was no charter schools in Maryland at the time. They gathered, and their design question was, if we could create the best school we could imagine, what would it be? Together, they created this project-based, arts-integrated, Reggio Emilia inspired, inclusive, and then every other ingredient they could think of.
You're listening to the Bold by Choice podcast with Vashanta Harris and Jim Gunner. Real talk about charter schools, from the boardroom to the classroom, powered by the National Charter Schools Institute.
Well, friends, welcome back to the Bold by Choice podcast, where we get the extreme privilege of spotlighting schools worth bragging about and the bold leaders who are shaping what public education can be. I'm Vashanta Harris.
And I'm Jim Gunner. Today, we're heading to Baltimore to visit a school that has been rocking it for nearly 20 years, showing what can happen when creativity and authentic relationships sit at the center of learning.
That's right. City Neighbors was born out of what we call a living room conversation among families who wanted something more for their children. A school where hands-on projects, arts integration, collaboration, and joy weren't extras. They were the foundation. A school where kids are truly known, deeply loved, and inspired academically.
Today, City Neighbors has grown into a family of 3 schools, 2 K-8 campuses, and a high school, all designed with the same core commitments: small communities, public project-based learning, Reggio-inspired environments, and governance centered in partnership with parents. And at the heart of all of it is a belief that decisions should be made as close as possible to the people impacted by them.
Family, we are thrilled today to welcome 2 leaders who have shaped this work and carried it forward. Help me welcome Mike Chalupa and LaShawn Bowser. Mike, LaShawn, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Hi, thanks.
Well, I am super, super pumped. But before I get ahead of myself, I would love to offer the 2 of you the chance to share a little bit about who you are as humans and leaders with our listeners.
Well, I am LaShawn Bowser, and I have been in the City Neighbors family for over 10 years. My first real job was working with young people at a residential counseling center for students that were in the juvenile detention diagnostic center. These were kids who had made some hard choices and were in a 90-day holding pattern while the system decided their next placement. Whether they would go back home or group home or foster care. The center was connected to a day school, and I started to notice a pattern where when students would have a rough day in the classroom, it would show up in their behaviors that night, every single time. How students experienced those 6 or 7 hours each day, whether they felt seen and capable and brilliant, or whether they felt dismissed or incapable, that was shaping everything else. And for me, it clicked that the learning environment, if we got it right, and if we designed it with intention and care, that we could change the entire trajectory of a young person's life. So soon after, I found my way to a classroom of my own. I learned along the way that there were many different approaches to education and to this work, and City Neighbors aligns most with my educational philosophy. So I'm now a school leader at City Neighbors Hamilton, and I get to partner with teachers to think critically and intentionally about crafting spaces that embrace the brilliance and curiosity and capability of all students. And I believe that we all have a role in creating schools where every child's genius is recognized and cultivated. So I'm excited to talk about what it means to be bold by choice in education and how we build learning environments that are worthy of our students.
Vashanta, I have to describe for the Bold by Cast Nation what Mike and LaShawn are wearing. So they've got pullovers, and it says known, loved, inspired. And I'll tell you what, as a charter school dad, so remember, Natalie, 8th grader, turned 15 yesterday. She goes to a project-based school called Renaissance Public School Academy here in my hometown. But I'll tell you, doesn't every parent want their kid to be known, loved, and inspired at school? Like, that is the joy of learning.
That's right. That's right. Maybe we'll grab us a pullover when we get together in DC, Jim.
Absolutely. We'll bring you guys one. Plus, we've been around long enough that we have one for every day of the year at this point. So different colors, different shapes. That's great.
That
Uh,
is amazing. Well, Mike, we'd love to hear your background story as well.
yeah, it was interesting. One of the things you sort of in preparation for this you asked was like an experience that shaped the why. And I was thinking about that. And I was thinking about my most vivid memory of middle school. And my most vivid memory of middle school, and I'm going to date myself just slightly, is that in the front of the room there was a big clock. And the thing I remember most about middle school is watching the secondhand tick to the moment that the bell would ring.
Mm.
And that's actually the first thing that comes to mind. If I go under that, I can remember some things we did, but really the thing I remember was just wanting the time to pass so that I could get out of class. And so I entered education really thinking about like, how do I make that not true for kids? How do we create spaces where they don't want the time to go and they don't want to leave the classroom? And I started as a fourth through eighth grade teacher, and I had a chance to create curriculum from scratch. And my first year teaching, we went on 13 field trips in the first year just because. And then I became a school leader at a great little experiential project-based school here in Baltimore. And then I decided to leave Baltimore and decided never to be a school leader again. And like wise people should in some ways. And then moved to Boston with my family. But then here in Baltimore, there's this little arts integrated project-based Reggio Emilia inspired school starting, and they were looking for a school leader again. And this embodied the kind of place that was striving for kids not to look at that secondhand ticking to just get out of class. And so came and spent a day here and found amazing teachers who were trying to do this work and center engagement. And then that was 19 years ago. So I've been here now for 19 years doing this work. We may have taken it a little bit too far. We don't have clocks in the classroom or bells in the school at all. So maybe we're overcompensating for my middle
A
school
little
experience.
trauma-informed decision there. No.
Exactly. Yeah.
A little bit, yeah.
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 So now I'm lucky enough to have, co-founded the two other schools and to serve as executive director and to partner with LaShawn on a lot of this external work together.
Vashawn, I got a slide of Jim Collins in. There's a big difference between being a time teller and a clock builder.
Mm.
And these guys are building a clock. And, Mike, on your watching that hand tick tock, right? Get out of class.
Mm-hmm.
I bet if you wanted to find 3 ways to have kids love coming to school, is you'd know them, you'd love them, and you'd inspire them.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, that's a great idea, Jim.
Yeah.
Someone should run with that.
Someone should. LaShawn, write that down.
I will. That's our next project.
That the imagery that you just created in words paused me in my tracks. But it connects to like the question that I had, and hearing you talk about your own middle school experience and like that clock just ticking away and waiting for it to end. My thinking is that the parents who were part of the founding team, there was something not right for their kids and their prior experiences. So I'd love for you all to tell us about the families who are part of the founding team and what were some of the problems they were solving for when you all designed your school.
Yeah. So we had a family, 17 families who helped found City Neighbors together. They all had young children here in Baltimore. Some of them were already in school and some of them were just to be school age soon. One thing I want to name before I say the story, both about my own middle school experience and for these families, is we all acknowledge that there are really good people trying to do good work in schools everywhere. And so this is not about that, right? But they were just really dismayed by the quality of or the experience that their students were having. They wanted spaces where their children were valued for, had opportunity for more creativity, that were lighting up to go to school every day, that were excited by the learning that was happening. One of them tells a story about they went to observe their child's classroom and they were learning to write their letters. I think this might have been kindergarten. And one of the students there took the whole paper and just wrote M's, all the paper, because they were lit up about M's. And the kid got in trouble. And instead of like acknowledging or celebrating that, he got in trouble for not just staying on the first line of M's and doing M's on the whole page. And I know that might sound like silly or trivial, but it was just a small example of the sense of that schools were just not built for for honoring the variety of students, knowing who they are, speaking to their passions. So they gathered. There was no charter schools in Maryland at the time. There was no law, and a law passed, and somebody was like, "Hey, this is our chance to start our school, to commit to public education, but to allow more families to have a different kind of school experience." They were hesitant at first, but they finally said yes together, and they spent years crafting the school. And their design question was, if we could create the best school we could imagine, what would it be? And so together they created this project-based, arts integrated, Reggio Emilia inspired, inclusive, and then every other ingredient they could think of together. And they met on the last Thursday of every month in the living room of one of the founders to really make this vision come to life. And they, which still happens to be our board meeting for our founding school. And they put together an application and they sent it to Baltimore City Schools. And we became one of the first, I believe, 5 charter schools in the first cadre of charter schools here in Baltimore City.
That's an amazing story. And, you talk about parent power, but there it is firsthand.
And they were a dynamo group. I mean, they are a dynamo group, but they really took a lot at the time. Charter schools were not a welcome thing here in Baltimore, and so both the fierceness of their vision of what school could be. There was nothing like this here in public education at all. And then also the fierceness of what it took to, like, as anybody who's probably listening to this knows, what it takes to start a school from scratch in sometimes not the most welcoming environment. It's quite a testament to like the power of those 17 and then all the others who joined along the path.
Yeah, if you start this road, you better know what persistence and fortitude mean, because you're going to need a good dose of both. Tell us about City Neighbors at its best. Walk us through a moment when you just were like, yes, we are living what we stand for.
Yeah. As school leaders, I think we're taking in as many of these sort of like small moments that we can to kind of help us understand if our approaches are working. And so like I could think of a ton. I could think of really big community-wide events that kids are performing and showing their learning, and everyone is in awe of the things that they have done and are being celebrated. But I think there's so much power in this really small moment that I thought about with this question. In the beginning of this school year, we took the time to interview all of our new and incoming students. We wanted to just get to know them. We wanted to give them a space to share what they were excited about, what their previous school experiences looked like, and some things that they were concerned about and even worried about when joining a new community, especially a smaller school community. And one of our students, she shared that she didn't have the best previous school experiences. She had moved around a lot and had been in a lot of different environments. And she was so clearly able to talk about how she had to change herself to fit into each of those environments, and how she did that like very quickly and intentionally, and actually bragged about how like really good she was at it at this point. And I remember that sort of like sticking in my mind about like, what does that mean to be a kid and have to move and change, and all while trying to figure out who you are. Fast forward to last week, we had a lunch bunch with a group of kids. And I just sort of checked in and I was like, hey, how are things going? And she was clearly able to articulate these words that are still sitting with me. She said, I feel like I can be the best version of myself here.
Oh.
And I thought that was beautiful, because she's sharing like not a filtered version, not a performed version, just her, who she is, and her at her best. And for me, that is evidence that we're creating the conditions for authenticity, and that when students are feeling safe, they can focus on learning and engaging and thriving and being themselves, instead of surviving and trying to change and shift to fit into other environments. So when I think about us at our best, I think about moments like that where our kids can clearly name that in the few or the long term time that they've been here, they're able to be who they are. And I think that that's a true testament to the conditions we're creating as a school.
Again, as a charter school dad, you want your kids to know how to read and do math and history and all those things, but to know who they are, Sounds like you got to go to a place where you're known, loved, and inspired.
For sure.
Yeah. And just for our listeners, I wish you could have seen our faces, like mine, Jim, and Mike's, as LaShawn's telling that story. That landed so well, I think, on all of us, probably for very different reasons, coming from our own individual backgrounds. And, we work a lot with authorizers. And one of the things we always talk about is there are some things that you can't measure that are just as important as the
Right.
finance, the
Yes.
operations, the academics.
Right.
And you just
Yeah.
hit it on the head, right? A student can walk into school, begin to engage in an environment where they feel like they are their authentic selves. I mean, you cannot put a price tag on that.
Yeah.
That is wonderful. Let's talk about your student body. So I know you guys have a beautiful enrollment, I think somewhere around 900 total across campuses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who are your students? How would you describe the makeup of your student body?
One of the things I would say is that we, purposely decided to stay a small school, a set of small schools. So our founding school has 232 students, so it's a one classroom per grade K through 8 school. We have a huge demand, and we had a huge demand for that school. We still do. And at the time, we thought about doubling the size of the school or tripling the size of the school, but instead, we decided to create another small K through 8 model. So, City Neighbors Hamilton, which is where we're sitting now, has also a K through 8 school with 250 students. And then when we were opening our high school, we also wanted to keep a small high school model. So we have about 415 students there. So we have 3 small schools totaling about 900 students. Our high school has students coming from 33, I think, different middle schools across Baltimore. So this is really a mix of all of Baltimore that makes it to our high school. And our K through 8s are a little bit more localized. So the majority of families come from about 2 miles from a radius of the schools. And our schools overall look very much like Baltimore. About 70% of our students identify as Black, 25% identify as white. And then we have a growing now Latinx and Asian population in our school. And about 1 out of every 4 students in our school has an IEP. So this really is the sort of beautiful, diverse mix of Baltimore in our schools. And like all charter schools here in Maryland, it is citywide enrollment, and there's no, like I think anywhere, there's no obviously criteria to get in. We have all kinds of students in at City Neighbors, which is exactly how we would want it. And we've been lucky enough to, it was one of the intentional pieces of the founding group to have it was a diverse parent body, and it wanted to have a set of diverse schools, even though we don't have any preferences or at the time we didn't have any preferences for lotteries here. And so it opened as a diverse school, and we've been able to maintain over the course of time a level of diversity that allows all of us to like be in the same space together and work together and live together and trip together and do all the things you do in a community. So I think that's us.
Yeah.
We do a lot of strategic work with boards and executives, and we always say one of the most important things you have to do is lay a good foundation, and that's your values and your principles and your beliefs. And your founding was part of that. You as a team have built and grown that. But talk to us about your school design. What makes you special, and how do your principles and values, beliefs tie into all of that?
I'm going to start by taking us forward a little bit. The first school was designed with the question of like, if you could create the best school you could, what would it be? When we opened our next set of schools, we shifted the design question in a way that I think you'll appreciate, Jim, which was, what would it take for every student to be known, loved, and inspired academically? That was actually the design question of the high school. But then when that became the design question of the high school, and we were thinking about curriculum and structures and culture and climate and physical spaces around that sense of being known, loved, and inspired academically seemed to, in a nutshell, capture all of the sort of programmatic and pedagogical pieces that make up our school. And so it has sort of retrofit now into being the core foundation for what we're trying to do here at the most basic level. Is to really, how do we get to really know kids, but also know each other as adults in this space? How do we help people feel really loved? And then what needs to be in place to try and create inspiration?
Mike, I want you to stay with us. We got to slide in. I want to hammer this home to our podcast audience. When you start out asking the question, what will it take for our students to be known, loved, and inspired? You build differently than if you start with a different question,
Sure.
right? What do I need to do to fulfill a charter application, right? It's a different question. And Deming tells us all the time in his writings that systems produce what they're designed to. So that you designed yourself for kids to be known, loved, inspired is inspiring to me. And I want everybody to hear that and just point it out. So thank you for that. And please keep sharing.
So yes, right. I mean, the thing you're trying to solve for, the thing that you're trying to create, naming that makes all the difference in many ways, right? So for us, what that meant was that we're project based, right? Our kids are learning a lot of their day, or good chunks of their day, and in-depth project studies. We're arts integrated, so arts are in the classroom spaces and in all of our art spaces. That learning is happening together. We are inspired by the schools of Reggio Emilia, which is an early childhood philosophy out of Italy that has some of those same aspects. But at the core piece of Reggio is this idea of a view of the child as creative, capable, powerful, and worthy of the deepest respect. And so what does it look like if you really believe that about children? So that means, what kind of physical spaces are we designing if we really believe they're worthy of the deepest respect? What kind of tasks are we asking them to do, right? So Reggio really inspires us. We are committed to trying to dismantle traditional hierarchy. So how do we make decisions together? And then in our high school, we developed our pod model, which we credit for a lot of our success, which is our students meet every day with the same 16 students and the same teacher for 4 years in a row and build their own family here at City Neighbors High School. And they walk in together as a pod, and they graduate, actually walk across the stage together as a pod. And that is the place where you are doing the work of circling up, navigating the social emotional thing that high school is. You're navigating how do I have 6 different classes and do them all at the same time? I have that one teacher that I know who's going to miss me every day, as well as my 15 pod folks with me. So these designs came about of this, trying to answer this question of like, how do we make sure that with 900 kids, everybody is known? How can we make sure that they feel love? And then how do we make sure that, like, in the experiences they're having learning every day, that there's the chance for them to get lit up, inspired, sparked by something?
Yeah, that's really moving. And as I'm thinking myself, as you're describing the philosophy, the design question, all of the elements that make the sauce really special for students, there's another part of the engine, right? And that's the teachers. And shout out to Baltimore City. That's where I was a TFA core member. So I've got a lot of love and appreciation for my Baltimore family. Be more '08 core, shout out. But would love for you all to share with us, what is special about how your teachers teach and what the teaching environment feels like at City Neighbors?
Yeah. I mean, because of our model, because we are a project-based learning school, it means that our teachers are not just teaching content in isolation. They're able to teach through compelling and essential questions that are really rooted in like what kids are interested in and what they want to learn about and what matters to the world around them. And so then they're not just learning the content, they're learning what the content means to them, and they're able to explore ideas that matter to them. That is one of the core pieces of keeping them engaged. So just starting at a place of interest, we're already leaning into the things that get kids to be really lit up and engaged in the work. And then in practice, that looks like first grade projects where they are exploring what is joy, right? That is literacy and social emotional development and artistic expression and critical thinking all integrated in a purposeful way. That looks like middle school ELA. One of the projects right now that they're working on is young people are more powerful than they realize. Prove it.
Mm.
That looks like the kids are walking away with an understanding that their voice and their actions matter, and they have the academic skills to be able to back that belief up. In high school, they're examining an essential question: how can we transform from AI consumers to AI creators to solve problems? And we're thinking about like all of the AI stuff that's happening right now. Kids are really interested in that work, right? It means that teachers are able to lean into something that kids are already interested in, and the kids are walking away knowing that they're not just passive users of tools, but they're creators and they're innovators. Another high school project right now that folks are working on is, what is it like to be a teenager? Like what a
Oh.
powerful question to have kids to be able to sit from the lens of like identity and try to understand and navigate what's happening in the world right now. For students, this means that they have a level of enjoyment and autonomy and identity affirming experiences along the way. And then their transferable skills that are embedded into their learning. And then for teachers, this means that there's also a level of enjoyment and autonomy, but there's also professional identity and dignity because they are seen and they're valued as experts. And this is why our teachers are showing up and why they continue to show up, because the conditions that we've created, it makes it possible for everyone to have a level of identity and enjoyment and joy and interest and things that elevate not only student learning, but adult learning too.
Vashanta, they sound like Ted Coldry, who's kind of the intellectual idea thinker behind this movement we call charter schools. But great things happen by the people closest to the action. You heard that.
Yeah.
Ted's theme is teachers as professionals.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ted talks about charter laws and charter authorizers as creating the conditions where excellence can thrive and be welcomed and spread. Like, it's just like, this is the embodiment of what chartering as an idea creates. And I think you guys are just an exemplar. I just want to give you a shout out to what you're doing and what you're modeling. And I want to take it back to your parents. You know, Ted always says that the laws don't create charter schools, they create the opportunity. And that Maryland's law gave this group of families to come together the opportunity to create now what you guys lead as city neighbors is just, it's the idea at work. We call it proving the promise together.
Thanks. For some reason, I feel compelled to also say that, like, not every day is a perfect day in City Neighbors, right? Like, this is not like we're not Stepford here. Like, this is this is hard work. There are days that feel known and loved. There are days where you want to, like, right? Like, so I also want to name, like, I do believe we do good work here. And I know there are tons of charter schools that do good work, and these stories are true. We're not making anything up. But, like, it's also just to name that this is real human work. And there are humans in this building. And that means that, like, it's not a perfect place at any moment, at any time, but we have that aspiration and we're sort of hard triers in it. So,
well, Mike, let's go there. I've heard humans can have bad days. Humans can be messy. Humans.
Yes, I've heard it too.
Drama. Humans can get sick. Like, tell us when you guys have gotten punched in the face and how you handled it.
Yeah, Mike.
See, you open the can.
Oh, Jim.
Well, I'll let you process that. I want to tell the podcast nation what's behind you. There's a big word yet, and it says, I can't do this yet. This doesn't work yet. I don't know yet. It's the mindset.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we go to the books, it'd be the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset. If you're helping these kids with the growth mindset, that's a gift. And I know it's not easy. I've got 7 kids of my own.
Yeah. And I love the through line that you brought up, Jim. And for listeners who maybe haven't been following along, our last season, we went back and unpacked the history of chartering in this country. And what is so powerful and resonant, many things are, is as we reviewed some of the early thinkers of the concept of chartering, which we talk about as a verb, right? It was the act of creating new and different to get better results for kids. So today, people describe charter schools as if it's a school type. And when we went back in history, we said it was never a school type, right? That wasn't the original idea of talking about the word chartering. It was the action of adults doing exactly what you're giving us an example of, creating the conditions where students and the adults who work with them every day can thrive, can be their authentic selves, can engage in lessons that tap into the dynamic layers of the onion that create us all, right? Like we're all very dynamic individuals. And those are the kinds of things that we love highlighting on the show. And it makes a really cool kind of quilt like connection, right? If you think about you're putting the pieces of a quilt together with the thread. I love seeing how those historical moments and those early thoughts from the 70s and 80s are showing up in buildings today in very real ways for kids.
Yeah. And when you think about like back to Jim's question about like sometimes what the hard days look like, this work is hard work. It's daily work, and we sort of approach it from a long term, long game mindset, right? Sometimes we get kids that come into our environment and they're not immediately able to feel seen and known and loved, right? They're coming in, they've got previous experiences, and so we are going to try every day to make sure that they see it and they feel it. And sometimes it happens after a year, and sometimes they don't name it until their graduation speech in 8th grade, right? Sometimes we get teachers that come into our environment and they need some professional development around how to hold these various models, and they're trying, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And I think the beautiful thing about this environment is that it is a really good place to fail. It is a really good place to like not do things well, because we're all committed to trying to learn how to do things better. And so like this might sound a little funny, but like we encourage failure because we're going to learn from it. And that's from the teacher perspective, the student perspective. That's from all of our stakeholders. We're welcoming the things that don't work because they're teaching us about the things that do.
That is so important.
All right, now I got to bring my leadership and sports stuff out. The great thing about learning to fail is that failure is an event, it's a moment, but it's not you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're known, loved, and inspired, you can see failure as just an event.
Yeah.
That you can fail forward, right? You can learn and grow from, but it's not you, the identity. You're magical, you're powerful, you're all the things that you guys talk about. And so I just love how it all comes together, and it goes back to your core founding from Reggio.
Mhm.
The whole child, right? Their dignity, their respect.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what parents want for their kids.
That actually brings up a question that I had. What do students say to you all, to their teachers in their graduation speeches? What are students saying about their experience at City Neighbors?
I think that overall, our students are reframing their struggle as evidence of learning rather than proof of failure. And that's powerful that they're developing the true growth mindset, right? As we're asking them to be able to articulate their thinking, and they're saying things that they enjoy the challenge of thinking deeply about things, beyond just getting an answer correct, or being able to apply their learning and their understanding to their real and lived experiences, situations that matter to them. These are the kinds of things that we're hearing kids articulate, and that's evidence to us that this approach is working. Students are experiencing genuine agency, not just the choice between like what we approve and what we don't, and options and influence over their learning, but they are given the space to name things that they actually want to learn about and how they want to learn about it and how they're able to present their understandings. Those are what's sticking with kids the most. And when we sit in a space as listeners to hear how kids are articulating their learning experiences, these are the things that are rising to the top. So kids are able to, even our 7th and 8th graders are able to go back to that super cool and meaningful thing that they did in 4th and 5th grade and talk about how it's shaped them as a learner even now. Those are the pieces that kids are highlighting. They're highlighting their agency. They're highlighting the times in which things didn't work in a particular way, but they're not naming them as failures. They're naming them as things that have helped them to grow and learn.
And then if I can add just another layer
Yeah.
to that, I think this may not be unique to the world, but a lot of them, when they are, will talk about the person that loved them.
Yeah.
And they, so we'll hear a lot about this particular teacher who really made the difference for me, or these teachers, or these adults that I was connected to. Like the part of being relational and in connection and in loved is a lot of also what we hear at the end, the experiences that they have. So we have high school kids right now in the South doing a civil rights trip for a week. They'll talk about that. We've had kids travel to Puerto Rico and to Germany. They'll talk about that. They'll talk about the field work experiences they had all over. So it's a lot. So it is all of the learning I've done, but it's also the humane part of it
Yeah.
that they'll often speak about as well.
Well, they say great leaders are both humble and forward looking. What's next for City Neighbors? Where are you guys headed?
Yeah, we're Reggio, so we're emergent curriculum. So we take this as we go. I have actually I have an aversion to strategic plans in some way because I think that they are too binding. But I would say a couple of things. One thing we haven't talked about is one part of our work that we haven't shared much about is that we work with about 750 to 1,000 teachers outside of City Neighbors every year. We believe that it's part of our ethos, is that it's part of our responsibility as a charter school to take a stand, to not be experts, but to take a stand for child-centered, engaging, humane work everywhere in all contexts, not just in charter schools. So in January, we have our 15th annual Progressive Education Summit. Dr. Goldie Mohammed's going to be the keynote there. And we bring about 500 folks together on a Saturday. It's free for all educators. Everything we do for educators is free. LaShawn and I host a podcast ourselves. This is our first time being guests, but this is we like being on your side better, guys. But so we have our own podcast called Flip Ed. We teach a course together, LaShawn and I, at Morgan State. So part of this work is yes to work on our schools, but also like how do we just take the stand and ask the right question in the world.
Yeah. I mean, and also another big part of this work for us is that we remain committed to being forever learners. So we do not claim to be experts in the work in any way. We're just really hard triers. And I would also say I don't think we give up very easily. So we continue to try. We're committed to continuing to deepen our own understanding around project-based learning, around arts integration, around deeper learning. We're committed to leadership development and just continuing our work around equity and anti-racist teaching practices. So that's another piece of our like forward thinking movement, is that like we remain as educated in the things as possible.
And then, on the side, we need to build a new building, and we're thinking about
All those
school
things.
and all the other things that charter schools do in the world.
In your free time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the midnight to 2 a.m. shit.
Vashanta knows I like to talk about books, but the Leadership Challenge by Kuznets and Posner says the 5 practices of exemplary leaders. The first one is they model the way. And what you shared in so many ways, you're modeling the way, right? The humility, the learning, the growth mindset, the whole child, that you're sharing what you're learning, you're sharing what you're developing. You're not saying it's just the only way. You're saying, hey, we're struggling and learning and growing, and this is what we're finding, and let's learn together. That's what's the spirit of the charter schools movement. Like, it's not just about our school, it's about all kids. And how do we be the rising boat that lifts all ships, because we lift all kids. Mm-hmm. And so whether you're expanding your school or you're sharing your teacher development, like it's all part of the same team. And I just want to, again, give you guys kudos for walking the walk.
Yeah.
Thanks,
One
Jim.
of the things Jim and I talk about, and our whole team, is that we're students first, we're student centered. And if we celebrate students, but then also ensure that every time we're having these adult conversations, we begin and end with what is happening with students. That's part of the secret sauce that we believe will help this movement continue to make really great waves for kids. And so when we thought about like, hey, what's going to be like our signature close this season? I was like, I got it. I know the question we have to ask everyone. And that is, what have your students taught you this school year?
It's such a great question. And it's so funny that Jim was just talking about models because I think that as an educator, that's probably one of the biggest things that I've learned. And I learn it more and more every year about how like we are models in real time, not just for each other, but specifically for our students. So the ways that we show up, both intentionally and unintentionally, they act as models for how our students show up. And we have this really unique opportunity to model for our kids the kind of human characteristics that we need more of in the world around us. And so the adults that our students will become are shaped by the adults that they see every day. And that's not pressure, that's purpose. So I think
I feel pressure now.
you feel pressure? Yeah, you got to be a model, Mike.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mike, that's where diamonds come from.
The pressure.
You're a
Sorry.
diamond. Yeah.
This was a really compelling question. I had a really good reminder the other day. There was a student who walked into my office who's a 12th grader. I knew her in ninth grade because she was a loud voice in the hallway that often had, with many of the words that only had 4 letters in them. And then in 10th grade, there was she was part of a big incident, and there was a lot of reasons why you would give up. And she walked in to show me her transcript, which she has a 3.6 for this year.
Oh, yeah.
And she is completely, she is also substitutes for the office administrator when she's not there at times, right? Like she is completely like harnessed all of that, right? And thought about being in a different way. And, yes, we all have success stories, but like what it reminds me of, and I think LaShawn referred to it earlier, is that like this is journey work.
Yeah.
And so much of education now, I think, is about urgency and expediency. We have to fix it. We have to fix it fast. We have to medicate it. I mean, whatever that is, like we have to. And so I think being intentional and purposeful is different than being urgent.
Yeah.
And like she reminded me just the other day of like, this is journey work because you want to fix it all right away. But you can't. And the patience of it actually creates greater things in the end. So, and she's a rock star now.
Yeah.
Can't wait for the hug when she graduates.
Sounds like she was known and loved and inspired, stuck with.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the transformation. We say that we transform lives. That's a great example of the paycheck you can't cash, right? But
Very
see
true.
that transformation as pure gold.
And I would just say it's easy to love people when they're lovable.
Yes.
It's a different thing to love them when it's hard to love them, right? And so that's the other piece of like with those kids and with that long journey, like how do you love them no matter what?
Yeah.
Because that's your founding principles.
Yeah.
Yep.
And kids know it. They feel it. They interpret it. It may manifest differently from each one of them, but they know. They're very clear on who loves them and supports them. And that's one of the secret sauces. We love the fact that it's like on your pullovers, but we've been talking about the lesson of when we are meeting these leaders and folks like yourselves who've built systems and conditions where kids thrive, every single time we end up hearing about how you have to love the students and love your team.
Yeah.
I know, Shauna, we got to get to the finish line and they got to get back to loving and inspiring. But I was with a school leader this week at the Michigan Charter Conference, and they told me how they had the students involved in interviewing prospective teachers. And they thought they had a pretty good interview as adults. And the students said, they never asked us our names. And the leader's like, I missed that.
Yep.
But for what we're trying to build, boy, that's a key miss for an interview.
Yeah.
And it goes back to the team. The kids are part of your team.
Yeah.
Right? They're not numbers. They're the respected, co-builders of city neighbors. And they embody it. And some it takes a little harder. Some have, crossed their arms and say, I dare you to teach me, but you listen, right? And that's the magic. So anyway, shout out to you guys. And Vashanta, we got to tell everybody again, come to Washington, D.C. in February and be part of this Diverse Charter Schools Coalition, because you're going to meet winners like Mike and LaShawn and a lot of others from around the country doing great things for kids.
That's right. In fact, Mike and LaShawn are going to join us on stage at that event. So we're super pumped for folks to go ahead and register, be in DC on February 3rd.
So
Well,
excited.
Well, family, if today was inspiring to you as it was to us, we encourage you to share this episode with a friend, a fellow educator, a student, even. I mean, if you haven't committed already, go ahead and hit that follow button. Make sure that you're able to stay along this journey with us. We have many more schools, school leaders, and inspiring stories to share, and we don't want you to miss out. So, again, LaShawn, Mike, thank you so much for the gift of your stories today. Family, we'll be back same time, same station next week. And until then, stay bold.